Declan, thank you so much. Lots for businesses to think about in a huge area that's always changing and always growing. Declan, we've got quite a few questions through today. Some have been pre-submitted and some have come through during the session this morning. And just to remind people who are along to the session today, we are recording this, including the question and answer session. So Declan, if you're happy, we'll make a start.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to start with a few of the questions that have come through live on the session there. The first one relates to the example you used where you mentioned that you used Twitter to reach out about your faulty item. And the question is, did you message them directly or was that just posted on Twitter?
It was just posted on Twitter. I tagged the brand in question and explained, I guess, my grievances, and the brand followed me and direct messaged me. So they took the conversation offline, which was good practice on their part, but my initial tweet was public and tagged the brand in it. So I think a lot of big brands are doing that. They're monitoring their Twitter for customer service related queries. So
okay. A query now about a TikTok account commercial. When I made the TikTok account commercial, I lost all the copyrighted music and was left only with generic music, which wasn't as effective. Is there any way around this?
Okay, so it looks like this particular person has gone from a private TikTok account and into the business or commercial account, and they've lost the copyrighted music and only left with generic music. So yeah, I would probably need to just delve into this a little bit deeper, because the business TikTok account does give you access to a catalog or a library of music. So I would just need to delve into that a little bit deeper, and I'm happy to maybe chat with that person offline just to get to the bottom of that, because there still should be that library of music. Now, potentially they are talking about maybe some of the trends and some of maybe the famous songs that they can't use in a business account. That's maybe what they're talking about there, but maybe we could chat offline about that. So I'm happy to talk through that one.
Okay, you mentioned how Gen Z and millennials will engage more with short videos on social media platforms. How much of this also applies to those clients aged over 45?
Yeah, good question. I think certainly Generation Z, millennials, that sort of age group has shaped the behavior and shaped the social media platforms, because essentially what they've been engaged with and what they want, the social media platforms have given them. So for example, we've seen the very quick growth of Snapchat in terms of ephemeral content which disappears after 24 hours, videos, images, that sort of thing, which found its way onto the other social media platforms, so like stories then on Facebook and Instagram and so on. So that has definitely, their behavior has shaped how social media platforms behave. In terms of the over 45s, I don't know statistically, how many, over 45-year-olds engage with, short form videos. My experience is that the early adopters are the Generation Z and millennials, and then that filters through then to every other age group. Eventually, now the time frame, I'm not sure, but if you think about, who adopted Snapchat first, it was the younger generation, and now it has matured, and now the younger generation are still the largest group, but there are a significant amount of older people, over 45s, etc., on that platform. The same with Facebook. It matured, and there's an older demographic, and the same with Instagram as well. So typically the trendsetters, the early adopters, are the Generation Z and millennials, but that will filter down through to the older generation, the over 45s and so on. But statistics and when I don't have, but I think it's fair to make that assumption.
Okay, thank you. Very quick question. What do you mean by vertical video?
So vertical video is portrait. So
Okay.
what you see, if you ever open up a TikTok, you'll see if you have your mobile phone in portrait mode, the video will be, you know, I guess long and thin, as opposed to widescreen landscape video. So whenever you're recording, you would, instead of holding your phone in landscape mode, you would hold your phone in portrait, you know, vertical mode.
Okay. Moving on to somebody asking a question, is there training available in social media ads? This is an area I struggle with in terms of knowledge.
Yeah, so there's lots and lots of resources online available. So, for example, YouTube, there are, you know, a large amount of social media companies, you know, global social media companies that offer tips and tricks and training on platforms like YouTube. So it's just finding the right, you know, quick search and, you know, how to use Facebook Ads Manager, for example. You can put that into YouTube and there'll be lots and lots of videos. There's also LinkedIn Learning. So anyone that has a premium account on LinkedIn will have access to a catalog or a library of Facebook training videos, Twitter ad training videos, Facebook Ads Manager training videos. So there's lots of content there. There's also Facebook Blueprint, which is a recognized learning platform where you can gain certificates for taking exams and watching training videos and so on, where you can brush up your skills in terms of social media ads. Now that doesn't suit everybody. Some people don't like learning from videos and they prefer more of a hands-on approach. And what I would recommend, if you're based here in Northern Ireland, is to reach out to your local council. I think, you know, nearly every council here in Northern Ireland has some sort of business support program live at the moment. Some of them are digital programs where they will match you with a digital mentor or a social media expert and offer you maybe a day of training, half a day of training, and so on. So I would advise anyone to reach out to their local council to see if there's anything available for that, and they'll be able to get some hands-on, one-to-one social media ads training.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned LinkedIn in that answer, Declan. Any tips on promoting your business on LinkedIn, how to engage people and reach potential new clients?
Yeah, well, LinkedIn is the you know, certainly the mostly widely used B2B social media platform. So anyone that's looking to promote their business in a B2B context, they should use LinkedIn. And the strategy that I've seen that works, excuse me, more effectively is like a social selling or a buyer-centric selling approach, where you take a long-term view of getting new clients and reaching potential new clients, and you build a relationship with them. So, well, how do you do that? Well, first of all, you need to network and get out there and add people to your network who are, you know, potential customers, existing customers, and so on. And then through a period of weeks and months, you drip feed them content, and content which positions you as an expert in your field. It's helpful content to them within their daily businesses, to the point where, excuse me, to the point where there's some form of online relationship. They trust you, and they trusted your content over the last number of weeks and months. And they'll, you know, if you reach out for a sales conversation, or in turn they might come to you as, you know, so if I've been drip feeding, you know, social media advice to potential customers over the last, you know, number of months on LinkedIn, and they now have a need to hire a social media company or to get a consultant in for a day or two, they may reach out to me because they've been aware of me, they've seen my content, it's been helpful over the past number. So it's a softer selling approach, and that's the best method that I've certainly seen of promoting your business on LinkedIn.
Okay, another question just in from our audience today, and this is from someone whose business is photography, and they're saying, I struggle with social media ads and confidence in going in front of videos, and I hate showing my face in front of the camera. Is there anything else I can do to showcase, for example, my products, and how do you go about it if you physically don't want to be in front of the camera?
Yeah, and that's very apparent for lots of businesses and lots of people that I come across myself. You know, I'm not too keen on getting in front of the camera either. I guess sometimes uh, sometimes you need to take the shackles off and just go for it, and it's not as bad as as you might think. Now, that's, I guess, an easy thing to say, but um, it's not always easy. But there are other things that you can do. For example, as a photography business, a lot of your work is going to be visual. You have lots of images and things that you could share. And what's become a really important trend over the last number of, I guess, year, 18 months has been audio. So having a voiceover, perhaps. So instead of a video, of you talking, it might be a series of your images with your voice talking over what type of image it is, the scenery, the people in it, whatever it is. So instead of getting in front of the camera, use your voice, use some subtitles and things like that, and try that to see how that might work.
Okay, another question in from our audience. Declan, what is your opinion of Twitter for business purposes nowadays?
So it's my opinion. I don't know if my opinion matters that much, because it's really on an individual basis. I think a lot of companies struggle somewhat on Twitter, partly because it's a resource issue, and Twitter is a really quick, instant platform where people go to engage with the latest trends, engage with the latest news. They follow a lot of news outlets, they follow a lot of correspondence, they follow a lot of business people. So the nature of Twitter is that people use it for immediate things, trending topics, events that are happening at the moment, and following a live discussion on those events. So that's why a lot of people use Twitter. And where a lot of businesses struggle is that they don't have that resource, to tweet potentially 4 to 6 times a day. And they maybe tweet once a week or twice a week or 3 times a week. And because of the fast-paced nature of Twitter, their tweets, die or they get lost. The lifespan of a tweet before it disappears is somewhere around 8 to 10 minutes. So I think a lot of people struggle to use Twitter in the way it should be used, and they don't get the engagement, and they don't get so a lot of people think that it's not a good platform to use for business. So I guess it's hard to say that it's not a good platform for businesses if you're not using it the correct way. So if you're using it the correct way, it can be very, very beneficial for businesses. Like, I work with some life sciences businesses who has a really engaged network on LinkedIn, or sorry, on Twitter. They use the same hashtags. They talk about latest advancements in technology and life sciences and so on, and it's very, very effective for them. But they have somebody dedicated to tweeting on a daily basis and following trends and putting their own slant on trends and breaking news and so on. So so my opinion is that it can be a very, very good platform for businesses, but it just needs to be used effectively.
Okay. Many of our businesses, Declan, are trading globally. Is there a facility for posting in different languages on Facebook and Instagram and so on?
So most people's Facebook or Instagram profiles will be set to a default language. So anything that you see and post will be in English, for example. So there's no real way to change languages and so on. So what I would recommend, especially if you're a global business and you're targeting, I don't know, the Americas or Europe or wherever that is to, if you are running targeted ads in that country, make sure that the ad is posted in the native language. If it's not, a widely speaking English or if the business community doesn't speak English as much as maybe some other European countries and so on. So make sure that it's in the native language if you are running any type of ads or whatever. Like we had a tourism business based here that had a lot of clients from Germany and Austria, and they ran targeted Facebook and Instagram campaigns in those countries, but ran them in German because well, obviously it's the native language, and it proved to be very effective. One thing I would mention as well is that they got a native German speaker to translate and didn't rely on Google Translate, which can be problematic to say the least. So if that's the route that you're going down, you're on a global scale, make sure that any content or any ads that you run is in the native language. But there's no facility that I'm aware of that you can change the language and so on.
Okay, Declan, we've probably about 5 minutes left. A
Okay.
few more questions. I'm going to try and rattle through here. One question: which social media platform is best for paid advertising to target small to medium-sized businesses in Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland?
So there's a lot of variables to that and a lot of caveats. I think a lot of what I see in terms of return on investment and cost per click. So anytime somebody clicks on an ad, the cost per click cost has been lowest on Facebook and Instagram. The best return on investment has been Facebook and Instagram for most of the clients that we've worked with. Now, again, there's a lot of variables to that. So one, your audience needs to be on those platforms. So no matter if it's a good high return on investment or low cost per click, your audience still needs to be with those platforms. So for example, if you're a B2B company and lots of your audience is on Twitter and LinkedIn, it wouldn't be worth your while running Facebook ads just because they potentially could get the most value for money. So if you're a B2C business and your audience is on Facebook and Instagram, or some of your audience is maybe on Facebook or Instagram, without doing any huge amount of research into the target market, it would be likely to say that Facebook would be the best platform for running adverts. But again, that's cautioned with lots of strategic things like your objectives, your target audience, what you want to achieve in content and so on. But
okay. And when it comes to content on social media, what is the right balance between fun and informative?
Yeah, so again, this comes down to the audience question, and your audience and your brand. So I've seen mortgage advisors, I've seen real estate estate agents and so on jump onto TikTok, and they've created videos on TikTok, but they've kept them informative as opposed to fun because their brand doesn't necessarily fit with wacky sort of videos, but they've kept them entertaining and so on. So there's no set guidelines between how much should be fun and how much should be informative. I guess that there should be an element of both, because that word fun I guess could translate to personality. So rather than it being like a wooden post, if you show some personality but keep it informative, I think that is the key to cracking social media content. If a brand can show some personality as well as educating the audience, then so if you can try and find the blend between both and make sure it fits with your brand and obviously what your target audience needs. There's a good framework called the Content Marketing Matrix, which categorizes 4 types of content essentially. So educational content, entertaining content, inspiring content, and convincing content. So obviously getting the right balance between all of those different elements, I think will be key.
And linked to that, what's the most beneficial? Is it all about quality of content, or is it about quantity and frequency of posting content?
Yeah, this has been I think back and forth throughout the years in terms of, you know, originally it was all focused on quality, and then algorithms shifted and so on, and people thought that, you know, they needed to, you know, post every day so that the algorithms would see that there's people engaging with them and all. But I think it's almost come full circle back to quality content. And you know, I think you're much better posting 2 or 3 quality posts per week than 7 to 10, you know, of poor quality. So I would say quality of the content over quantity of the content, and that's backed by the social media companies as well, because, you know, they want people to use their platform. They want people to log on and check on a daily basis and spend as much time on it, because essentially the more people that are on it, the more people see ads, the more revenue they get. So they want quality content that your audience is going to engage with. So quality content over quantity.
Okay, thank you. Declan, I think we'll have to conclude our question and answer session there. That's been hugely beneficial, I'm sure, to our audience and our businesses that are with us today. Obviously, social media is one of those areas that's continually changing, moving, and trying to keep on top of the trends is very challenging for businesses out there. So that's our webinar finished for today. I'd very much like to thank Declan again from Brilliant Red Digital for presenting today and for being put on the spot there with those questions. And we try to get through as many of the questions as we could, and apologies to those people for whom we didn't answer their question. We hope you found the session useful, and if you weren't able to have your question answered today, we do continue to update our business website, nibusinessinfo.co.uk, with the latest advice, guidance and FAQs. And to receive updates, if you haven't already, please sign up for the email newsletter on nibusinessinfo.co.uk. Also please keep an eye on the InvestNI website, where you can register for all forthcoming events and topics, or events across all topics and all areas. I'd also like to take this opportunity this morning just to mention to you our Export Health Check. Our Export Health Check will assess your existing exporting capability. By answering a few questions online, you'll be provided with a tailored guide that will give you the tools to develop your own bespoke export strategy. To take the next step in your exporting journey, please complete the Export Health Check at investni.com/export. As I mentioned previously, today's session has been recorded and will be available on the InvestNI website in the next couple of weeks. Should you wish to be notified of latest events, news and support from InvestNI, please also ensure that you register for our 2-minute update email newsletter at investni.com/newsletter. That's it for today's session. I'd like to thank you all for attending today. It's been great to have so many people along to this session. I hope you all have a great day, and thank you.